Okay.
Showtime. Hello, everyone.
Hello. How do we feel about these Sarah J. Maas books, Kelsey?
Oh, I could really talk about this in depth if you want me to.
Well, we have to talk about another book today, but I'm just saying, just general impression.
I think that if you want like a smutty good YA
Ooh, smut.
girl boss like vibes, I think like Sarah J. Maas
It's
is a
YA.
good like entrance. Uh it could be argued
Okay.
that it's not. But when she originally published the books, it was under Bloomsbury, and Bloomsbury is a children YA publishing house. So in the beginning, but then her series got like super smut, not like erotica, but like very smutty. And while I personally don't think like children, not children, but like teenagers are not going to be exposed to this regardless, like who's to stop them from buying an adult book?
Yeah.
They just changed the publishing age and publishing company so that they could separate the two.
Gotcha. Okay.
So now I think now she will be shelved in, well, it depends because some stores still shelve her in YA, but it's just to have that differentiation. But I think Throne of Glass series is much less romance smutty than Court of Thorns and Roses.
Throne of Glass or whatever was the one that I was talking about.
Okay. Yeah, Throne of Glass is YA, and I think you have to know that going in because the storytelling, especially in the beginning, is quite simple. It gets more complex as the story goes on because there's like 7 books.
Interesting.
But just to keep in mind that she wrote the first book when she was like 17.
Oh wow, really? Wow.
And she's my age.
Oh wow, she's written a lot of books. When what's the other series that she did?
Court of Thorns and Roses.
And that one's not YA.
It was.
Okay, it was as well because that one they put like in Barnes and Noble. That's in the straight up like fantasy section or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's on purpose because it gets smuttier as the story moves on, and I think she just went like balls to the wall in like the later books.
Just
metaphorically
like the
and literally.
What about Dune, Kelsey? Dune's on sale on this.
Bobby, Sea of Tranquility, $5.99 hardcover.
What, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the fictions.
And it's a cart. It's the only one they have of her.
I mean, that's good. I want to get it.
100%. I'm 100% buying that.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough fooling around, students.
This is your fault. You should tell people what we're doing right now.
This is all on you.
Tell people what we're doing right now, Kelsey.
No. I will not encourage this type of behavior in my classroom.
You gave me this website 3 minutes ago. That was before.
They have the Ordinary Monsters hardcover for $6.
Yes, I'm buying it.
Yeah, I know. I really wish. I'm not.
We never could have known.
No, even I didn't know. Honestly, it surprised me today.
I'm adding so many books to my cart right now.
Okay, focus.
No, you did this.
You guys you did this.
This is the show now.
Yeah.
No. Pay attention.
Oh, Cloud Cuckoo Land. $5.99. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go on.
It's time to discuss Confessions by Kanae Minato and what we thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Who would like to do this? Justin, pay attention or you're failing the class.
Would you like me to do the summary?
Honestly, no.
Wow. I'm going back to shopping.
Whoever wants to give the summary.
Bobby, I gave the last summary. Go ahead. You do this one.
That's true.
I only did the 7 before that. So.
Okay, Justin, go. Let's. I'm giving you a lot of trust here, not the cracking of the knuckles.
So, you'll have to forgive me because I don't remember anybody's name in this book, but I'm just going to give a brief synopsis of the book. Mm-hmm. It's the end of the school year, and we're in Japan. I'm assuming it's Japan.
It's Japan.
And this teacher is speaking before the classroom, and she's giving her like end of the year, not lecture, but like, like last final words to her students. And unbeknownst to us, the reader, which eventually comes out, is that this teacher's young daughter, died, which she feels at the hand of two students in this classroom. And in this speech that she's giving to the class, she's going to set off a series of chain events that will change the lives of multiple students in the classroom. And there will be no going back from the consequences that have been set forth before this speech was given. How was that?
That was very good.
See, I'm not that bad.
That was wonderful. A+.
I thought for a moment you were going to just go into a beat by beat explanation of everything that happened in the book. Right before you were like, and that sets off a chain of events. I was like, okay, good.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil everything yet, but I do want to know what your ratings were. So, Justin, go ahead. Tell us your rating.
5 stars. This is a 5-star book.
Are you joking?
No, I'm not joking. This is a 5-star book.
I've done it. I've done it. Bobby, what's your rating?
I think I've been going back and forth. I think it's between 4 and 4.5. Like I really liked it, but it's not a 5-star for me. I'm probably leaning more towards like a 4 star for this one.
I also gave it a 4.
Yes, we know, Kelsey, because you went against our wishes and rated the book before the book club.
Rating the books on Goodreads before we do the book club.
I have anxiety disorder and I put my own stress on myself. And I said, I need to do this. Otherwise, it doesn't look perfect in my mind. Okay, so excuse me.
I know that you have to have perfection on your Goodreads thing because you literally corrected me last night when you're like, you read this book twice, so you have to fix that.
I know, and and it's because I know it would bother me. So I was like, I need to just let him know. I noticed. But I don't think other people are as weird as I am, so it's okay. But okay, so let's get into the discussion. Basically, each chapter in the book we learn. So this was a surprise for me. I thought the entire book was going to be her, the teacher, relating the story of her child's murder. And I have to say, like, at the end of the chapter, and it started with the next student, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be an interesting, like, format. So how did you guys initially feel about the format?
Bobby, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. I was initially thrown by it as well, to the point where I got to like the 3rd section and I was like, is the teacher only in the 1st section of this entire book? I was like, the synopsis made it sound like she was the main character of this book, and she hasn't been in it since the first 30 pages or whatever has happened. And then obviously the end happens when the end happens. But I actually really did. I enjoyed it. I really liked the structure of it. I think that, and again, I don't know how much of this is because it is a translation of a foreign language book, but there was some, there's obviously some cultural stuff that's just a little different that sometimes I feel like I was taking as odd, even though I don't think it was meant to be odd. And even some of the ways, like the whole first section, right, where the teacher's kind of just talking to the class and you're not even getting the responses from the class. She's just thinking, oh, that's right, Mr. So-and-so, this is what happened. I was a little thrown by that at first, but I really liked that each section was a kind of a different first person account of what was happening, and in totally different styles. Like one was like a diary, one was like her speech, one was a letter, one was this blog post. I really liked all of that stuff a lot. One was like a voicemail or whatever the last one was, whatever it was. So I liked that part of it a lot. I ended up being one of the things I think I most liked about the book.
Yep, I agree. Justin, did you have any thoughts on the format?
I loved the format. I was taken from the first 2 pages of this book. I mean, first of all, this book's not very long. It's definitely the shortest book that we've read. I think it clocked in on like 210 pages. I read it in basically a day.
Same.
But I literally couldn't put it down. I loved as Bobby mentions, you're meant to interpret what the students are saying. Like, I got the biggest kick out of that. And at first I was like, wow, we're really getting into it in the first 20 pages. Cause I also thought that it was going to be from the teacher's perspective, the whole book.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it wouldn't have been as good if it was that. So I was super jazzed to jump into different characters.
I agree. Like, especially the point that you said, like, I think it would have been too long. Like, I think at the beginning it was so jarring to like cut from that chapter into a new perspective, and the students like, hey, here's what you missed on Glee, and I was like, oh, what is happening? But I do agree with you, Justin, that I think it would have felt more drawn out if the whole book was just her telling the story in this format. One of my favorite things in literature, like one of my favorite like tropes or whatever, is epistolary format. I love when characters are telling stories to each other through letters, blog posts, texts. Like that gimmick will always get me. I always appreciate that a lot. So having that aspect in the book, while it was jarring at first, I think it was just because I wasn't expecting it. And I ended up really liking the like different perspectives that we're getting, but also that we can see the internal struggles of the characters that I think we wouldn't have gotten if it was just from the teacher's perspective, specifically the two students. I forgot their names, but A and B basically, besides their perspective.
Shuya and Naoki, I believe. I don't know if I'm saying them correctly. Those are the names,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I'm saying them correctly.
Yeah. We wouldn't have gotten their motivations. And I actually think it's far more interesting because I think one of the main themes, which we can get into later, is motherhood and how a mother's actions like shapes a child. And there's a lot of discussions about like parenthood and stuff like that in this themes we just love in this book. And I don't think we would have gotten that if we didn't understand everybody's relationships with their mother in this book.
I think it's also a book, right, about perspectives and sides of a story, right? Because you're often as what's called the witness, you're kind of the witness to this evidence that's being presented to you through all these different sides. Your sort of perspective on the events changes wildly between every time you get another person telling you what happened, because you have what the teacher perceives as the answer. And I think in that moment, you're like, okay, this is the truth. Like the teacher is telling the truth. And I'm going to now when I switch perspectives, when I wasn't expecting. And I think it's especially smart that she didn't switch immediately to one of the two like perpetrators. It was that third student. It even throws you off even more. The class president, because you're not immediately thrown into, okay, here's the opposite point of what the teacher was just saying. And I liked that a lot. But you get these perspectives happening, and it's like your idea of who the real bad guy is, I guess, in your head changes like every single time you jump into another person's perspective. And I thought that was really cool.
Just to jump ahead, I think like just to give an example of like what that was, but it was like in the beginning, the teacher, like she's like, this freaking creepazoid brought me an electric zipper, like a weirdo, he's gonna kill someone. And I was like, that's right, you tell him, teacher. And then in the chapter with that specific boy, he's like, I was so proud of this and I wanted to show someone that I respected with his mommy issues. And he's like, I'm gonna go show my homeroom teacher because she's also a scientist like me, and maybe like I can. And then feel like you can feel his disappointment in her that she didn't reciprocate this excitement. So I was like, oh, she could have prevented it if she just acted excited. And then you listen to the final chapter where she's leaving a voicemail to him and she's like, you still killed someone. So I was right. And I was like, actually, she's right.
Yeah, she's absolutely right.
But like, I remember like listening to that part where he's like, oh, I was so disappointed, like whatever in her face. And I was like, oh my God. But it's true. And then she whipped me back around. She put me back into shape. But it's like this idea that you're feeling sympathetic for every character that's chapter is that we're following, that we're understanding their perspective too. Because at first you also think like only I don't remember who the first, but at first you only think like, oh, the one that made the zipper is the bad guy, and his poor innocent little friend was just like tagged along and is now suffering, and he's home, and he's becoming like
a shut-in.
A shut-in, yeah, exactly. And then you're like, oh no, he's also crazy.
He's actually more fucked up than the other kid, I think.
Oh, I don't know. The other kid killed a lot of multiple people, the other kid. But I think like when the kid's like, oh, actually her eyes were, I knew that she was alive before I put her in the pool. I was like, what?
Me too. I was rooting for him. I'm like, he just wants a friend. He has a fucked up relationship with his mom. Like,
and that's like the last thing you hear from, and then it goes on to the next person. And I'm like, what?
The other fucked up kid.
The other fucked up kid. The other kid is much more traditionally fucked up. The other kid is like, I killed little animals when I was a kid, and then I graduated to people.
I don't think he did. I think he did that. He put that on his site so that people would like not read his thing, and just his mom would read it. I think we think that he does that, and the rumor spreads, but then you find out in his chapter that he was just posting that so that like people who were weirded out by him just wouldn't read his blog anymore, and only intellectuals would tune in.
Sorry, he didn't kill little animals. He just killed multiple children.
Yeah, but like get the facts right.
Okay, sorry.
I think what was also interesting about this is that it reminded me a lot about of a book that I read in my philosophy of religion class, which was Confessions by St. Augustine. And St. Augustine wrote this book called Confessions, where he was struggling with his relationship with the Lord and like that thing, and contemplating all the time the actions that he's done and what has led him to this like reflection and how he needs to meditate and like reconnect basically. And I think, I'm not sure if that was deliberately chosen as a chapter title, but I think it's interesting because Confessions by St. Augustine is a epistolary format in simply because it was his literal diary. But this talking with an omniscient type of watcher, which in St. Augustine's case is, I think, the Lord, but in our case is us. And I think having this omniscient type of thing through looking at perspectives and understanding the internal struggles of each individual character, I would like to think is probably a direct title relation in the very least. And this like struggle with their personas and internal issues that maybe it took this moment to really think about. And I've been making a lot of jokes about their mommy issues, but I think that is definitely something that was very apparent and ran through the entire book.
Yes.
And them not ever realizing it. Same with the both mothers as well, because I think both mothers had their own issues, but they themselves didn't realize the potential issues that they were also causing, which is not, obviously nobody knows how to be a parent. So, but not acknowledging maybe the mistakes or the actions that they've taken in their lives as well.
Yeah, I mean there are levels too, right, even to both of them, because
obviously, the teacher, I'm not putting her at the same level as the other guy's mom.
Yeah. But I mean what's her name? The Naoki's mom. I mean, she was one of those like, she's one of those like in denial moms all the time, like, her perfect baby can't do anything wrong and blah 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 whatever, and doesn't really listen to him when he's trying to tell her things and just but I mean Shuya's mom was terrible. Like just terrible. Like just left him and like never contacted him and I know they give reasons for it, but it's just like that but they're the exact opposites, right? But and even like Moriguchi-san,
Moriguchi sensei,
sorry, Moriguchi sensei, I'm sorry,
how dare you,
I'm sorry
it's because I took karate. That's the only reason I know that.
She has her own, you see from her perspective as the mother, right? She's the only mother you really see the exact perspective of. And she is, dealing with her own set of issues. I mean, her whole life, like she has a crazy life that she leads, and she has to bring her kid to school with her, and she's putting her kid into danger, whether not the danger of like obviously not that the kid would get murdered, but letting her kid wander into like an abandoned pool and like feed a dog through a fence, just kind of wander. Like she's very busy. It's not her fault. She's dealing with a lot of stuff. But
she's dealing with being a single mom.
Yeah, but it's all about how like these actions all have their consequences, no matter what the intentions, right? Because you're seeing Moriguchi's intentions, which are obviously they're good. Her intentions are good, but she thinks she's doing the right thing. Even to the point where she's trying, like she knows that, Shuya there's something wrong with him. She knows there's something wrong with him, and she's so frustrated because these other people can't see that there's something wrong with him, to the point where this ends up happening, and she actually could have stopped it, not just by being nice. She should have stopped it the other way, which is to be like, this kid is like got problems. Like he wants to like hurt people on purpose, and these people get charmed by this kid into thinking, no, he just has he's just very smart and he's very industrious, and they just kind of let him go because I think it's also just about how adults just want to see what they want to see in kids, and not really see the kids themselves.
Yeah, and I think you could relate that to everything else too, right? Like Naoki's mom thinks, oh, my son is perfect, and this is paired with her belief in their perfect life as well, right? She doesn't want to tell her husband what's going on. She's more concerned that the outside people are like, oh, Naoki-san's son is one of those weirdos. That's what her main concern is, not his well-being. She's not wondering why this is happening. She's wondering why this is happening because she doesn't understand. She doesn't want him to stay home. It's less about like wanting him to feel better, believing. It's less about that and more about, you need to go to school because people are thinking that we are weird. And I think that that's an incredibly relatable thing as well, especially with super close-knit like communities and societies where you constantly feel judged because you are judging other people. And Naoki's mom is constantly judging Moriguchi sensei.
Yes.
And constantly like judging everybody else. And it's even like when her son was like, hey, I murdered someone, she's like, but it's because she scared you. How?
Yeah, exactly.
Is a 14-year-old scared of a 4-year-old? Please explain to me.
Yeah. I mean, and she doesn't even really, like you said, you can tell she doesn't care if he actually goes to school or not, because when he gets like that excuse, when she like kind of gets that excuse for him, right, from the doctor, like that's all she cares. She doesn't care.
Yeah, because now she can tell people.
She's like, oh, he's sick. He can't go because of this and this. She doesn't give a shit if he actually goes to school. She only cares about like what she, what how it reflects on her.
And even when the teacher comes to like be like, hey, we want to bring your son, back to school, like the other one's being bullied too, so like I'm really trying to fix things, whatever. The mom like doesn't even like care about the other kid. She's not like,
no,
oh, like maybe they're both being, no, it's like, I don't care that this other kid is getting bullied, like how is that my problem? But it's like maybe something happened. I don't know, put those two brain particles together. Like that was my thing with I feel like she was the most like she had the biggest, like, let's say, perspective, because we're reading from her diary being read by her daughter. But I think like she's the example. I think she's kind of like the middle ground of the two other moms, right? Like I think Moriguchi is like on really one side, even though we can get into her crimes later because she's the only one of the moms that has committed a crime. So let's not forget that. And then you have the other one that just abandoned her son. And even though there's a logical reason for it, obviously, like, how can you not expect your son, the older that he gets, to come find you?
Yeah.
Especially, like, he's interested in education. You've instilled that in him. Like,
told him you told him when he was a kid that he was smarter than everybody else, that he was better than everybody else, and then you just disappear from his life. You know, and his dad isn't like a really like active concern in his life. Like he's not a very active parent. He doesn't have the interest in things. He thinks his dad's an idiot. You know, he thinks his mom left his dad.
Yeah, he was very that whole chapter was very Catcher in the Rye. I was like,
yeah,
I cannot with this teenage angst.
Very, very much so. Yeah, yeah. You know, what I think is really, I mean, obviously what Moriguchi does in the first bit, right? And I'm reading the book and I'm like, okay, like this is like she's starting to spin out this idea of like what happened to her daughter. But it starts out with the whole thing with the milk, explain the milk day and this thing with the, and I'm like,
so casual. I'm like, oh, I had milk day too.
Yeah. This whole initiative into like the government needing everyone to drink milk, you know, just the whole thing. And then she talks all about like teachers and how teachers, you know, used to be a certain way and now they're a different way. And then there's that one famous great teacher and you all love him, don't you? But you know, he's sick, he has cancer. I'm like, why is this the way the book is starting? Like, I'm like, this seems so like, are we just trying to set like the tone and place of where we are? Cause like, this seems irrelevant to what I know this book is about. And then when she starts telling the story about her daughter, I'm like, okay, this is where she's like kind of just like doing like normal school announcement stuff, and then she's gonna so it's like this shock, right? And then when it wraps back around to the milk and to the fact that the milk has the blood of someone who's infected with HIV in it that she gave to the two kids she believes, you know, tried to kill who killed her daughter, who both killed her daughter. I was like, this, I think I texted Justin. I was like, this is the craziest shit I have ever read.
Yeah, me too. I did not expect this at all. Like I had a feeling, like we all spoke about this, like, oh, like the back of the book, that's crazy. Like I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew from like snippets here and there of reviews that like it gets fucked up. But I was like, when I read that she infected students with HIV, I was like, what year was this written? I was like, I can't even believe thinking that far. Like I was shook. Justin, I'm very interested in your perspective too when the opening pages, because you said from page 2 you were like, oh, I'm here. So you were in the thick of it when she was going on about the milk and like the teacher expectations and stuff like that.
I mean, not knowing where the book was going, I think just the way that it was written in that like first person, you're not hearing what the students are saying. Like I was like, I am all about this. Like
it's eerie.
The way this is, it's eerie, but it's also like in all the books we've never read anything quite like this.
No, definitely not.
So, I mean, I was immediately captured by that, and then just going from person to person, you're like, how deep is this rabbit hole going? And I mean, and also, so all the books you read, this is the one that I think I love the most, just because I literally had to find out what's going to happen next. Where is this going? Like, is the teacher ever coming back? And then when you find out how she comes back and the way the book wraps up, I was like literally, I just went like, fuck.
Yeah, I really love that full circle moment, because we just finished a chapter with this like egotistical Chucky level psycho person. And he's like, all my teachers are stupid, especially Moriguchi-san, because she doesn't see the vision that I have about my anti-theft purse and blah blah blah. She doesn't understand like this and that. And then the book ends with this phone call, and she's like, you think you're so smart, but guess where? Oh yeah. Oh my God. She committed terrorism. I forgot. She didn't just poison students.
She also killed some innocent people while she was at it.
I just like, as it was coming out of my mouth, I was like, I just realized the other crime she did.
Well, she didn't actually poison the students. To be fair, it didn't happen.
That's true, but she committed psychological torture.
Yes, she definitely did that for sure. Absolutely.
I have a question. Like we keep going back and forth, but I do have a question about the addition of the lunacy story
Mm,
in the book. It's a very quick mention by Moriguchi, but each child brings it up in a way. It seems to be a very impactful like news event that
yeah.
happened, but I'm curious how you guys like interpreted or thought about this particular story. If you felt it was relevant or whatever.
I mean, I don't think it was super relevant to what
Hmm.
was going on. I just felt like it was just like a kind of like a something to take us out of the story a little bit and point us in like a different direction to be like, oh, like where do people get influences from?
Hmm.
Mm,
And like while that was interesting, I really did not care about what was happening in that
Okay.
story at all. I just wanted to come back to
Yeah.
the teacher who was poisoning her students with HIV and what was going to happen after that.
Hmm.
hmm Yeah. I think I think it's an interesting because it's sort of brought up by most of the characters in the story. I think it's sort of supposed to be sort of a like a litmus test for how people feel about certain things, right? It's like a peek into how they think about things. So, for Shuya, it's sort of something he almost like aspires to go towards because it got such attention. He thinks like if I can be this, right? It
Yeah.
took attention away from him first of all. Like the story
He got one upped.
he got one upped by this story, and now he's like, but if I can then one up that story, then my mom has to come back, right? And like Naoki's mom is like terrified of like it's sort of like this thing of like this is something that you know we have to avoid at all costs, and like what could have led this kid to do that, and
Again, very in denial. Like,
very in denial. Yes,
it's the child is just fucked up. Maybe
yeah,
like
yeah. And Moriguchi uses it as sort of like a parable for, what happened, basically saying the same thing. Like this story got just about my daughter. No one cared about it because of this thing that happened.
Yeah.
But this is just the way culture, she's kind of talking about culture in general. Right. And she kind of weaves that into her whole like thing about, how students are treated and, how kids are now and all of that bit. And I think, it's one of those things too where I feel like the culture difference between like American culture and Japanese culture starts to show itself a little bit more because there are these moments. I think this idea of like respect and honor and your reputation is so much more important in that culture than it is in this culture, that I feel like it's even the crimes that she committed are even almost backseat to the sort of embarrassing spectacle of this thing that happened, and what must her family think of what happened. Like all of that stuff seems more important to them than the actual crimes that were committed.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the lunacy story is just used to like as a metaphor for their actual thinking in a more literal
Mhm.
sense, and I definitely agree with that because obviously like Moriguchi is using it to say like my daughter died and nobody cares because here's a psychopath. Then the literal psychopaths that are in her class are like, oh, now we won't get as famous because this story was happening, but maybe if we do it a bit further, we'll get this attention, right? And Naoki is like, oh, he thinks he's so good and this and that, and I can one up him, and it's always about like this presentation of the self as well, obviously with extremes, but it's always this sort of like you were saying, Bobby, like it's a perspective, but it's a presentation of like um to get psychological, the id, the internal like being of what you are. I wasn't joking when I brought up Freud. I think there's a lot of Freudism in this book, and I think that that's really fascinating. But as someone, to go back to Naoki, Shuya, or no, it's Naoki's mom. To go back to Naoki's mom, but and this perspective of like the presentation of the self, growing up in an immigrant community, I think this competition is very reminiscent of like um, a type of community or society where everybody has to one up each other. And especially like with I can't speak obviously for Japanese culture, but to speak about like an immigrant culture, it's very much okay, we came here and now we have to prove ourselves, and so eyes are always on you, and you always have to be better than everybody else. And I think that this is very reminiscent in this book as well, because we have the very literal you have to be better than everybody else in Shuya, and then you have the more like suspicious internal better than everybody else in Naoki's mom, and then the other characters are kind of weaved in a similar way.
Mhm.
So I really like the lunacy story for doing that, to present like another aspect of presentation and perception of society as well. Another perception of society as well, I think we have to touch upon this, is the very early 2000s perception of HIV, and the way that the kids are like, when she announces that she's been not married, but with and had a child with someone who was HIV positive, and someone that they very well respect. And the kids are very ignorant of HIV awareness and the spread of HIV. And I think that it, to me, it felt like a very weird, because she could have just poisoned them. So I'm sort of like, I'm curious about what you guys thought about this edition, and if you felt like it could have worked in another sense, with another sort of like viral infection or poison or something like that, like something else rather than HIV. And I'm curious if you guys found, maybe I just didn't see it, like a more metaphorical version, like reason of adding that type of viral attack on them.
Well, I mean, for me, it's because it's a long term form of punishment, right?
Okay.
It is.
Yeah,
It is a
I didn't think
thing.
about that. That's interesting.
I think that is what it is, 100%. I think
Hmm.
because even she says later on, right? She says, "I knew even if you got the infected blood, that you would not. There was a very low chance you'd actually get HIV, like from that sort of."
Yeah, she's kind of using their ignorance, I guess.
Yes, she's using their
Okay.
ignorance against them.
Yeah.
Their ignorance that is matched, with their sort of teenage belief that they know everything, right? So there's like there's that very dangerous mix in their brains at the moment, at that particular age.
Yeah.
And but there, it's like you need to wait to even find out. Like it could be years before you even know. It could be months, it could be weeks, it could be before you know if you even have it or not. And then after you have it, it could be a long time before you present with symptoms, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously Naoki doesn't even won't even take a shower in places that he feels like it might, he as a whole won't eat food off of real plates, won't eat, because he's worried about transmitting it that way, even though that's not a way that you transmit HIV.
They probably
right?
haven't even had sex education.
Yeah, no. And again, you say it's early 2000s, but to me, again, this is a cultural thing, right? Where I feel like it feels like almost like the 90s in America as far as HIV awareness goes.
When you said early 2000s, I was like, wait, is this when the book takes place? I had to think about it for a second. And it is, but that awareness that they had felt, like Bobby said, like extremely early on.
Yeah.
Like even I knew, even I know or knew at 14, 15 years old, like, all right, HIV is transmitted these ways. Like you kind of know, but it is, maybe it's something to do with the culture over there where it's just like, that's not brought up or talked about. But to answer your question, Kelsey, to me, it just felt like a ticking time bomb.
I didn't think of it that way, but that does make the most sense.
Like if they're poisons, they just die.
Yeah.
This is worse. It's like why some people don't want, capital punishment. Because it's like, okay, wow, you just cooked you just, your punishment's over.
Yeah, you kind of exactly.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a Dante's Inferno type of idea, where Dante's Inferno is this where in hell people are experiencing a hellish scenario all day long, every day for the rest of eternity, instead of it being this like, okay, you just go to hell and burn up in flames, for example, and then that's it, your soul's gone. Your soul is essentially eternally struggling forever. And so I guess there's this, and I don't want to say that I was maybe correct about the religious assumptions in here, but I think this is a sort of like Dante's Inferno type of hell, where they're essentially creating their own hell. Maybe not Shuya, but Naoki very much did create his own hell.
Oh yeah.
Mentally, and brought his mother with him as well, because his mom was like, well, if you're not gonna live, I'm not gonna live.
Yeah.
So, and so they both kind of suffered at the hands of their mental struggles with having to deal with something forever. So Naoki's mom, it's like, here is this reputation that I will have for the rest of my life because of what you did and what society will think about us. And Naoki is essentially died without really knowing if he was infected. So they created their own like hell in the house. And I find that very interesting. I didn't see it that way, but you guys are right. Like, it's more of a long-term punishment that feels right for this mother who had her daughter murdered at the hands of psychopaths.
Yeah,
like it wasn't. I thought it was going to be an accident. I was like, the twist is that it was an accident. The whole time, and it wasn't, and that was even more fucked up, I think.
Because her whole thing from the beginning, right, is like, I didn't go to the police, I didn't do this because she doesn't want them to get the satisfaction of feeling attention, also feeling if they paid their dues and now they can move on with their lives. She doesn't want them ever to feel that way. She wants them to feel stuck, like you said, in this kind of loop of hell of having to suffer. Obviously, I think at the beginning she doesn't quite understand like Shuya's whole like personality and what he actually wants. You know, the fact that like when he realizes he's not infected, he's like upset that he's not infected because his mom won't come and visit him. You know, like that whole thing is like so fucked up. You know, and I think what happened to Aoki is kind of, I think, what she expected to happen to both of them in a lot of ways, right? I think that was, and in anyways, I was like, when Shuya was not affected in that way, and even when, you know, when he has, what's her name? What's the class president's name? Mizuki. Kind of becomes like his girlfriend or whatever. You're like, man, is like, because you're also, before you get to his chapter, you also have get to Naoki's chapter. You sort of have this idea like maybe Shuya wasn't actually trying to kill her. Maybe he was just trying to like play a prank, and then, you know, because it went wrong. Because eventually you hear him, you see his perspective going like, what did you do? Like that's the perspective you're getting, like when he sees Naoki, like, you know, back at the school, and you're like, oh, maybe he's saying like, what did you do? Like, I wasn't planning on killing her. I just wanted to like, you know, hurt her, you know, so that the teacher would feel bad, not like, and then you threw her in the pool, or like, what's wrong with you? And then you realize, no, he just wanted like, he wanted his mommy to come home because he killed a little girl. Like, it's just nuts.
It's messed up in like all the worst ways.
Yeah. And the way he treats Naoki is like, he's like, you're a fucking idiot, man. Like, I would never be friends with you. Like, you're nothing. You're a little piece of shit.
What an idiot. Like, I'm sorry for having to think that you're the smartest person alive, and then you're like, no, I'm gonna tell him I hate him. Idiot. You wait. What's wrong with you? And
because he wanted to get caught though. He wanted to get caught though. That's the whole thing. He didn't care. Yeah. You know, it was like he was trying to get away with it. He wanted to get caught. Yeah, so
that's true.
So that was the whole like crazy part about it to me, was his whole idea was just, he was just trying to get attention at every single turn, and it just escalated for him, right? Like to where he would eventually get that attention he wanted, and he just never could get it. And what attention he got was never enough, right? He got that prize at the science fair, but that was enough because it was really just a way to try to get his mom to notice that he was a scientist.
Yeah, he didn't even care about his science fair. He's like,
no.
And I think that also shows his like innocence in a way, because he's like, this science fair is gonna get my mom's attention, and it's like, no, she like literally left you.
Yeah.
She doesn't care about your school science fair.
No.
I'm sorry.
Doesn't.
I know you're a child. And I think now we can get into the mommy issues. We've touched upon it a
So
lot.
many.
So
We've
many
touched
mommy
upon
issues.
it a lot. And I think it's very much from beginning to end mommy issues, because milk in and of itself is a very mother focused form of nutrients. And Moriguchi giving milk is like a symbolism of like a very motherly action, right? Like a mother is
Yeah.
there to provide nutrients for the child, and then, oh, what's that? Oh, that's right, I put a viral infection inside it. So this sense of nutrients and motherhood is kind of tainted immediately at the beginning of the book, and then we dive into the sort of intense breath of mother issues that circulate the book. So the kids are then kind of being used as the example of like a neglect, and you do see that because the Moriguchi is neglecting them of nutrients by giving them these infected cartons of milk. Then you see like their mothers in and of themselves are neglecting them, and so it's a very interesting contrast between the two, and how Moriguchi justifies her actions by punishing them in an almost like newborn sense of betrayal, kind of, because you rely on your mom from like day one to feed you and nourish you.
Yeah. I mean, even like I didn't even really think about the kids thinking of of Moriguchi as like a mother figure at first when I was reading it, but there are those two instances, right? The thing with the purse, right, that we talked about, the little shock purse that he gets all upset about, that she doesn't appreciate it. And then also Naoki has that thing where he gets in trouble and he has to, like, apparently, again, this is one of the cultural things. It's like your teacher, your homeroom teacher, has to come bail you out when you're in trouble out in public.
I didn't
somewhere
part at all.
It's like, just probably just a cultural thing. I didn't know about it. And then, but then he gets really upset that that other teacher comes to help him instead of the homeroom teacher, because apparently she's not allowed to go and help him because she's a woman and they're not allowed at a certain time at certain places. Whatever. And the fact, again, it's something, this ignorance thing where the kids just don't know the rules or whatever, so they interpret it as a slight. But this idea that like, oh, your homeroom teacher didn't come to get you, so that's like a big slight. She's a disappointment. She'd, you know, she's probably, and then even like his mother is like, she's probably too busy taking care of her own kid to come help my kid. I'm like, yes, like what is that?
Yeah. I do think this is a cultural thing, because especially, and again, like none of us are Japanese, none of us live in Japan.
Right, no.
But Japanese children from a very early age are kind of in school taught to work together and to be together, and they're all a part of this community of school. So the kids stay after school to clean the school. They clean their classrooms. The class president is the one that collects like attendance and puts one kid in charge of cleaning the blackboard, for example, one kid in charge of mopping, and the class president takes on this sort of like leadership type of role, and then the teachers are also there to protect the children, and they're kind of all working together in this ecosystem of school. And I think that that's also a part of the reason why it's gone so in depth in the beginning, where she's like, I know you expected me to be there always for you, but if you're a boy, I can't do that, and blah blah blah. And I think it's partially for perhaps maybe Minato was like, maybe if this gets published outside, like I'll need to explain this. It maybe some people reading it in other areas of Japan are not going to understand why this is happening, because maybe in this town it's still this way or whatever.
We also don't know, right, what gets added by the translation.
That's
because
another thing too. Yeah.
Translators don't just word for word like translate from one language to another. They also have to add like syntax and context that doesn't exist, so that it makes sense to the and fits into the language in which it's being interpreted into. So, you know, because it wouldn't make sense if they just took the Japanese and made it English. It would sound insane to our ears. So they have to change it up. So there might have been some added as well by the translator to sort of give context to what was happening in one way or another, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that it was probably put into this so that we can understand like why maybe this was a slight in a sense to the students, because even, is it Mizuki, the second chapter?
She's the class president. Yeah.
Yeah. She writes like, hey, ever since you left us, this is what happened. And this teacher thinks that he can be one of us, and he's not. And blah, 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 blah. And she's like, basically she's like, I decided you need to know the rest of the story and what happened after you left us. And so I tried writing you a long letter to tell you everything. Then I realized I didn't know where to mail or what to do with it, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like explaining why she's writing this thing. And what's so fascinating is that she brings up, and then because you weren't there, we did this. And because you weren't there, nah. So there's still this like treatment and thought of her as a mom who left, much like Shuya's mom who left, where there's still this like, this animosity, I guess you could say, towards this motherly figure that has left them and performed the most ultimate betrayal, which was hurting the milk.
Yeah, well, but it's funny because Mizuki knows, right? She knows the truth about what happened, because apparently it's also the class person's job to go and test AIDS-infected milk.
Herself.
I know, but I know, but it's
she was the one that thought about it. Though.
She's the one that thought about it, though. She says she's talking about that other teacher.
The class president.
She's talking about that other teacher, right? The new homeroom teacher says he isn't even thinking about what's best for us anyway. He's just a mirror. We're just a mirror he uses to stare at his own reflection. None of us this would have happened if he wasn't so self-absorbed. And I think it's fascinating too, right? He comes in as sort of like this, again, talking about the parenthood metaphor, like this kind of like, absentee father who now is here and is trying to be like, I get it, kids. Like I'm
one of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's work together.
And he's exactly the opposite, right? Of what what she said at the beginning. He's the exact kind of teacher that she talked about at the beginning, who's like, you always want to be your friend, doesn't really, all that kind of stuff. To be fair to him, like, I love at the end that you find out like he was like, he knows her, and that like she was like planning like ideas in his head and everything. She really had her like the strings going like the whole time through the whole thing.
Yeah, because he seems like such an like one-off character, because the students think of him as such a one-off person, right? Like Mizuki thinks he's just dumb and self-absorbed.
He is.
It's valid, but like anyway. And then Naoki like is like, why is this guy showing up at my fucking house every day? I don't want to go back to school. So it's like nobody takes him like really seriously, and like his motivations to try to like bring the class together, whether his motivations are good or bad. And I just think I forgot what I was saying. I don't know. My mind went completely blank. I don't know.
It's about the teacher, the new the male homeroom teacher.
Yeah. Mizuki.
That's when the whole bullying stuff happens, and that bullying scene is like,
oh my,
fucked up, man.
Rough.
Yeah.
He's like, yo, kiss this guy who has AIDS. We think you're gonna get AIDS if you kiss him. So it's like, it's this whole like, it's just so messed. The whole thing is messed up, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I think that that's another like example of like using the milk as well. Another example of just this nourishing part of life being used for, I guess, not the worst evil that's in this book, but like used for evil to bully someone. And I think what's also interesting is that they sort of take Moriguchi's word for like truth. And I think that's also because she is their motherly figure, right? Especially because until you really grapple with things by yourself, you tend to believe what your parents tell you as like a fact and truth of life. And I think that's also part of the reason why I expected the novel to go in a different direction, because I was like, what if it's all an accident and like she's the ultimate like psycho? It didn't go that way, but like, no. I think that would have been like another twist. I would have been like, oh, it was an accident the whole time. They weren't even there. Like, that's what I was kind of expecting to happen, because I thought that this like running theme of motherhood and trusting moms would have like turned the corner. But once you start to get to Naoki and Shuya's chapters, like okay, you're like okay, it's just everybody's fucked up.
Yeah, they're bad.
Yeah.
I do love too that she's like, I'm not gonna say their names. I'm gonna call them Killer A and Killer B. But Killer A won a science prize for making.
They're all like. Like that. Yeah, and so then like even Shuya's like she says that like as if nobody's gonna know it was me.
Yeah. And then he's all excited because he's like, oh, now she's gonna tell the cops. Yeah. And then he says that thing, that fucked up shit. He goes, what does he say? He goes, where is it? If my mother would have come running to help a son accused of murder, she would even more likely to come for one who had AIDS. I was jumping for joy on the inside, as cliche as that might seem.
Yeah. Shuya.
It's the least cliche scenario I've ever read in my life.
So what was your guys' favorite chapter of the book?
Ooh, good question.
It's a good question.
I think my favorite chapter is Shuya's.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I really wanted to know why he was the way that he was. And as soon as the mother issue started, I was like, makes sense. That was my, like, I definitely think Shuya was every chapter I think was interesting, but Shuya's was definitely the one that was the most engaging to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I for me, I think Shuya. Second to that, I think it's the one where Naoki's sister is reading the mom's journal. I think that was my second favorite. What about you, Justin?
I think the last chapter is my favorite.
Yeah.
Just the last bit with the teacher, you mean?
With the teacher, like, because you're like, where is this all going?
Yeah.
Like, where does this climax?
Yeah.
And then you find out somebody's built a bomb.
Yeah.
And
well, not just somebody, Shuya.
Shuya's built a bomb.
Shuya's committed, it has built a bomb. And like, okay, where is this going from here? And then when you find the resolution to it, it's like a gut punch, because she literally, I think the last couple of the last couple of sentences, you find out where the bomb is, and you're like, what the hell? And then the book ends.
It's like the coldest shit imaginable.
So cold.
Because I'm reading the bomb. I'm like, okay, so now I think my head, this book is about one act of revenge that spirals out and causes all of this damage, right? And I'm thinking Moriguchi, we're not gonna see her again. Like, this is just sort of, she's left, she's gone.
Yeah.
She's done her thing and she's let it grow.
Yeah, because there's that one thing that said, like, there was one sentence, I don't remember which ever, was like, what do you think of your revenge now? Like, someone talking like to Moriguchi even though she's not there. And then when the ending actually happens and she's like, you thought you were gonna, I don't think so, buddy. Like, you and your little mama's boy bullshit is not gonna happen. And then you hear the explosion, like, on the backwards on the phone. She's like, oh, you hear that? That was your mom's science building. Now she dead and it's your fault. I hope you can start getting better now. And like hangs up the phone. And I'm like, what the hell?
It ends with the most like largest attack at the person that has the most mommy issues.
Yes.
It's like, not only is he never going to see his mom again.
Yeah.
She was also pregnant with child.
Yeah.
So she's like mom times 2.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's his fault. His mommy issues quadrupled in that. And I think
it's ice cold.
Yeah, ice fucking cold.
And I think what's really interesting is that we've already talked about the format of the book, but while you were talking, Justin, I realized that she has also adjusted the format of this book, where the climax is the last sentence of the book, rather than a very typical novel where you have the intro, the climax, and then the conclusion, right? Here, the conclusion and the climax, it's like the book is just, it's like, this is where we're staying.
Yes.
It's like a mic drop. Like, it's like, nothing else needs to be said.
No.
Yeah. It's like, I honestly, it's so valid, because I don't care what happens to she after. So like,
no. By the end of that chapter, she does a good job of me being like, I hate this kid. Yeah. This kid deserves everything that's coming to him. Like that, because before that chapter, I was like, because every chapter seemed to give you a reason to obviously show you the unseediness of whatever the character, but also give you a little bit of like, okay, like this character was going through their own sort of personal shit. And Shuya is going through his own personal shit, but because it's all full of like, I'm better than everybody else sucks, I will do whatever it takes to get my mommy to pay attention to me. You know, I don't care who I hurt. He kills Mizuki. He doesn't care.
Oh my god, I forgot he killed Mizuki.
Yeah. That was the moment where I was like, okay, like whatever happens to this guy, I do not care at this point. And also the thing
where out on it, she was the first one to call him out on his mommy issues, and he's like, well, now you have to die.
Yeah, I'm gonna kill you in this weird other house that I have or whatever.
Yeah.
I wish my study room gave me another house.
This study house. His dad is like, you're a weirdo. I'm gonna give you a whole other house to do your shitting because I don't want to deal with you anymore.
I think it was a literal embodiment of neglect.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah,
it's the way that I saw it, because they're like, we don't want to deal with you.
Yeah, we don't get you. We don't like you.
And he's like, they're just dumb.
Yeah, I'm marrying somebody else. We're starting a whole new family. Like, we don't really want you to be, we can't like get rid of you, but we can just put you in this other weird house that you can go and do your stuff in.
Grandfather, it was like his grandparents, like shed or something.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting because I completely forgot that he murdered her. Yeah. And it's like, oh, he actually murdered maybe the reader and the perception that the reader is having on him. Like, we're like, oh, like anybody that like knows anything about like mommy issues and Freud is like, buddy, we see you. And he's like, you know what? Fuck you guys.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness. And like choking her. And I feel like death by choking is also such a both sensual and sexual innuendo, because you have to be very, very close to the victim to get that close to choke for that long. And there's also some like sexual like way of thinking about it, because choking is like often a very like beginner kinky type of thing, and then choking adds to this conversation of power that we're having as well. This conversation of very literally attacking the readers, attacking the idea of mommy issues. So I think there's a lot there with the choking that is being symbolized by this action that I completely forgot about. I was like, I was too focused on the other shit that I was like, this minor murder that he did.
This
tiny murder. Oh, because like the Mizuki chapter
was so early on too.
And feels like the most, before you get to that ending, the most disposable of the chapters, right? Because
she's like disposable in both ways.
Yeah, because you don't really learn that much. You learn about the new teacher, and you learn about sort of like the overall perception of Moriguchi from a student who's not one of the psychos, and that's important, obviously. But up until that ending, when Moriguchi comes back, and also you learn about what else Shuya has done, it feels almost like, why did we do that chapter? Was it just, I thought she was going to be involved in maybe something else that was going on or whatever it might be. So it really made that chapter, I think, retroactively more important because of what happened at the end, which I thought contributed to how good the book ended up being, because nothing ended up feeling wasted throughout the book, which of course it's a very short book. So if there were wasted pages, then it would have been a weird situation.
I at first I was thinking like, oh, Mizuki's chapter is really just like, oh, here's another example of a kind of fucked up girl that's in Moriguchi's class. Like, she's interested in the lunacy story. She's like, actually, this story of this girl murdering her parents has made me interested in chemistry, and I think I'm going to pursue it now and go examine the milk cartons.
AIDS milk.
Yeah, so I was like, oh my god, is she the real villain? At first, I was like, I feel like
Kelsey was waiting for a big twist.
You really were waiting for the twist, huh? And the thing is,
I think the explosion at the university
we really did get a twist, though, because the kid that you think is just going along for the ride is actually also a stone cold killer.
Yeah, but for a very different reason, which I thought Naoki's like motivation was pretty interesting, because his was a straight sort of inferiority complex, I think, type of thing, right? Because he is not in his chapter, he is not the smartest kid. He's has a lot of trouble in school.
Yeah.
He is, bad at athletics, even though he tries to do athletics. He gets sort of, verbally abused by that coach, and which leads to that slight with Moriguchi and all of that stuff. And, he has this older sister who is way smarter than him. So he feels, he feels lesser than her. And he doesn't buy his mom's, you're the best kid in the whole world and you can't do anything wrong, blah, blah, blah,
well,
BS.
I mean, who does as a teenager?
Right.
Fair.
Right. But he, even that sort of what you would expect a sort of like traditional, like, familial parental support, he can see through her sort of denial in many ways, I think. And so he feels really bad about himself. So when he gets that attention and gets that sort of boost from Shuya, who he perceives as cool and smart and great, he starts to feel, big. And so he's willing to go along with anything that he even does because he feels important. He feels, and he starts to do better in school. All this stuff starts to happen right throughout his time. And then when Shuya leaves him, the moment he thinks he's gotten what he wants, that moment where he drops her in the water anyway, and you see that moment from his perspective, and he says, like, I can't tell you if I dropped her, if I was already dropping her when her eyes opened, or her eyes opened and then I dropped her. But after it, he felt powerful because he was the one who made the decision.
He did what Shuya couldn't do.
Shuya couldn't do. So it's like for him, it was just all about acceptance and feeling like he was something, right? Which is the kind of the opposite reason of why Shuya is doing it in the first place. He just wants the attention of one person, right? And that's not what Naoki wants. Naoki wants to feel for himself like he has something, like he's worth something, and he gets to up to it in a very fucked up way, obviously, because his mother won't accept that he needs help, right? She won't accept it. So he can't get help from there. He feels like his teachers abandoned him. So it's just this whole other part of like, this whole other sort of motivation for why he does what he does.
Yeah. And I think there's also like, looking at it from like a LGBTQ kind of perspective, there's also like a homoeroticism, that's there as well. And I think that that's also like thinking from a more Freudian perspective, right? It's the need of the mother and the pushback of like a male perspective. So we have like with the very like logical one, which is the replacement teacher, but then it's also Shuya and Naoki's combative relationship with one another, the need for each other, but then the like gratification of the pull away. And so I think all of this is like extremely interesting, like looking at them in this psychological way in so few pages, I think is like a very masterful talent on Minato's part and the translator, who I feel like we should give credit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Towards. I don't know who. They don't make it obvious.
It says it. I think I have it here. Hold on a second. Oh no, in this it doesn't say it. Hold on a second.
Yeah, that's Steven Snyder.
Steven Snyder, yeah.
I think it's a very masterful like talent to be able to have so much like meaningful metaphorical and psychological discussions in the background of just a fucked up plot.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's always a talent, I think, with a really good writer, is like being able for people to have these discussions at such a metaphorical level.
Yeah.
So I think that was really interesting.
There's a couple of points I wanted to ask you guys about what you thought about these sort of like themes, and there I think I know the answer from you guys, but I want to know. Do you think that in the end, Marguchi was justified in what she did. Justin?
I think giving the kids AIDS, I mean, or HIV.
What a thing to say.
I think I think having the revenge on the students is fine. I think to the point where she now is killing other innocent people. Like the mother had nothing to do with this. The unborn baby had nothing to do with this. Anybody else in that lab had nothing to do with this. Is taking it too far.
Right, but she didn't kill those people. She didn't make the bomb. She didn't set off the bomb.
Yeah, but you knew what was going to happen when you placed the bomb there. So you could have put the bomb in an empty field. Like she chose to like, yeah, I'm not the one pushing the trigger, but I'm complicit, you know.
She's definitely complicit for sure. Yes.
In all these other murders. And it's just like, yeah, that's going to hurt the kid even more. But, what's that expression? Bobby, what's the expression that we use for The Last of Us? The cycle of violence.
Cycle of violence.
The cycle of violence. It gets you every time.
It does
that's what The Last of Us. It gets what The Last of Us taught me.
They invented it.
An important piece of work.
They invented the cycle of violence trope.
Yes, they totally did.
What about you, Kelsey?
I think it's wild that you think it was okay that she probably virally infected them with HIV.
They did kill her daughter.
Listen, I want to give you guys as parents the safe space to say that you would murder someone. And I understand that completely. What I'm thinking is more like, I obviously like wouldn't want to condone murder at all, and I think this is a very interesting perspective too, because I think there's a part of me that's like, they're kids, but they're still psychopaths, right? Like I don't think we should excuse them. That's another theme of the book, is like juvenile delinquency, right?
Yes.
I don't think we should just excuse them because they're children when they're doing fucked up things, because at their age of 14 and 15, they have a moral compass at this point. I think after age 2.
They know killing a 4-year-old is wrong.
Exactly, guys. I think it's because the action that she did led to multiple other horrible actions, right? Because then she caused like Naoki to kill his mom and kill himself, and then she caused Shuya to create this bomb and to get even more attention. But at the same time, like I don't want to blame her for trying to teach a lesson. I do think she's still I think she's equally complicit in the violence that subsides afterwards, and I think she's just as unstable or unhinged. Maybe not as much, because obviously she still has this emotional damage that she's dealing with. But yeah, I don't know, because I don't know how I would be, because I do think it's still fucked up, and it's like, how do you at that point also, like, do you really care what happens to you as long as you have your revenge, right? Because you don't really want to. She has nothing else. Her boyfriend's dying, her daughter's dead. I think she goes in to explain that she doesn't have a good relationship with her parents because she went to school and got an education. So it's like, I
how
feel
dare
like
she?
Women these days.
But
like, so it's like, at the same time, like, she has nothing left to live for. So like, why not get her revenge? So I think, like, if we're going to excuse the beginning,
I didn't say excuse. I said justified. I'm not saying you have to say that. You have to be like, there's no, like, what she did was okay. That's not what I'm not saying, Kelsey, would you yourself poison a student with HIV if you were upset with them? That's not what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I guess it's like, I can justify it in a fictional.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Okay. Yes, then yes. She's fine. Go off, queen.
Slay.
Slay, literally.
Yeah. So, Mizuki, I think it was her chapter at the beginning because I highlighted 2 quotes and I think it's like 29% of the book. So I'm pretty sure that's the second chapter. She has 2 things that happen like basically almost back to back where she says the people who are hurt most should have the right to judge the ones who hurt them. And then she says after this, it's much easier to condemn people who do the wrong thing than it is to do the right thing yourself. So they're kind of like competing sort of ideas, one after the other. But, I do think, this is, I think the case being made, right, is that a mother who loses their child and knows who did it, and those people haven't faced any sort of repercussions for what they did, right?
And they won't because
they won't because there's no way to prove it. That, all these things that are going on that she has to deal with. Without that recourse of justice, this person who is directly affected is going to do the most. He's going to do the most brutal thing possible, right? Which is why you don't let the person who has been wronged like this be the one who meters out the justice, right? I think that is sort of the idea. Right. But I will say this. I think this woman is going to be in pain for her entire life, right? Her entire life. Yeah. There's not going to be a moment of her life from the moment her child died to the moment she dies where she's going to be okay. It's just not going to happen. She's never going to be whole. Right. So thinking about it just from an emotional perspective, right? I think what she does is she sets off a little grenade in the middle of their lives, right? And says like, I did this thing to you, even though she didn't really do it to them, right? Or she didn't think it.
She thought she did it.
She thought she did it to them, but even if she thought, even if what she had thought she did went through, she even says like, this is not how you get AIDS. It's not how you get HIV. So like, I know that there's a very, very slim chance that it could have happened, but like, most likely it was not going to happen. But she wanted to put this psychological bomb right into their lives to see what would happen. And Naoki completely falls apart, right? Just completely. But he does so because he's unwilling to talk about what's wrong with him, right? So you talk about like this idea of like, masculinity and how you're taught to act as men. And it's, again, we're not Japanese. We don't think, but that culture is seemingly even more buttoned up than our culture is when it comes to talking about stuff like that, especially for men. And I think like that is something like he won't talk about. He won't talk to his mother about it. And I think he says at one point, like, I realized the one person who loved me the most, I was like a burden on their existence or whatever. Won't talk to her, won't get tested for it. Like Shuya goes out and gets tested for it, like as soon as as soon as he can, basically, because he wants to have it. He keeps going to school. He keeps doing, all of these things. But Naoki had multiple chances to correct, right, the direction he was headed in, right? She didn't actually physically do anything to him, and his life completely unraveled because he was unwilling to talk about his problems, to face his problems, to try to address whatever problems he had in his life. Shuya just, I think Shuya gets to the thing with the bomb regardless, right, of what happens. The only way he doesn't is if he gets arrested for killing a 4-year-old girl, right? That is the only way that he doesn't end up going to the part where he leaves the bomb, right? So I think what she does to him before the bomb thing, I think is almost irrelevant to his life. Yeah. It's mostly the things that she does that she doesn't even realize when she's not trying to get revenge on him that cause him to spiral more than when she's actually trying to hurt him, right?
Well, it's an attention thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm really not getting attention from any of my mommies.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't say not even like that. It's
mommy sensei.
Oh God, no, that's even worse.
I'm just gonna record that voice note and send it to Justin like once every couple of days. Mommy
like,
sensei.
Oh, no. He got me again.
Yeah, like I think it's very prevalent because I think Shuya's actions are completely unrelated to anything. In fact, I think he just, whether it was because of Moriguchi or not, he would have done something to the extreme regardless, because he gets this wild idea just by being like, oh darn, nobody's paying attention to my murder
Yeah.
because the lunacy girl is out and about.
Mhm.
How dare
Yeah.
she?
So it's like I think he would have done something regardless to that extreme. Naoki, I think, would have been perhaps led down another path, but always at the influence of wanting to be accepted. Um, and I think like whether it was something else, he would have maybe not, maybe it wouldn't have been to this extreme, but he definitely would have fallen down another path, I think, regardless.
Yeah. And also, his mother is also to blame for what happened because she was unwilling to take him to an actual real doctor who would have tested him for things that were wrong with him, right? Because he didn't want to, because he would complain about it and freak out about it, and she would just be like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, he literally screams at a restaurant because milk spills on him, and she's like,
Yeah.
I wonder what could be wrong
Yeah.
with my sweet, kind little boy. It's because that girl spilled milk on him. Like,
Yeah. What an evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
it's only because he's potentially going to be hikikomori that she's like, oh no, now he's gone too far.
Yeah.
It's now summer vacation is over.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna see now. So I think that's interesting because
And she blames the new teacher for his mood a lot of the time
it's always the teacher.
it's what I'm saying, but she's always blaming
Yeah.
somebody else, and so
Yeah, of
it
course.
leads to
She's a
what
victim
happens.
regardless.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that.
There's not a lot to this book because it's.
Well, we've
200
spoken for an
pages.
hour and a half about
Yeah.
like
We've
the metaphorical.
we've spoken about the book for like probably close to the amount of time it took me to read the book.
True.
And just as long as we've had with other longer books that
Yes.
we've talked about, like we're I think it's just really interesting because I just think it's an attest to the skill of both the authors for how much they were able to put in it. I did want to mention that I listened to this on audio, obviously. And the audiobook was really interesting because the story is being kind of told to readers as not a conversation, but as like a tale of caution. So I think the audiobook really, really worked for that. So I just wanted to highlight that was also really well done. And it really felt like things were being told to me. And I think that's also something interesting too, because often books get criticism for being told and not shown. So like readers can visualize things, but I think this worked in a way where it's like the narrative device is telling, and therefore we are still like being shown the scenarios. So I think that I just think it was just a very well crafted novel, and I think I would increase to 4.5 after this discussion because I do think it was way more craftfully talented than I think I immediately realized after listening to it on audio.
There's a movie, by the way.
Yes.
They made a movie, and it's very hard to find. I'm trying to track it down because I really want to watch it because I want to see how they do this in a film and how if it's very literal adaptation or they get a little bit if visually how it's done, if it's if it's sort of stark or if it gets a little more imaginative with the visuals and stuff like that. I'm pretty interested in how it comes together. So, and it was relatively well reviewed when it came out. So I'm kind of fascinated to see.
Even this book has won a lot of awards as well and been nominated for quite a few American awards and Japanese fiction awards. So it's been very well received. It doesn't surprise me that the movie is also extremely well received. I mean, I'm sure you can find it by like going on a pirate ship and like exploring.
Yes.
But
it's not available to rent or buy or stream anywhere as far as I can tell.
Maybe on the open blue sea.
Yes, exactly. It's possible.
Or matey.
That's my next stop. If they don't have it in the library, which I don't think they will, but I'm going to check anyway.
Maybe if you have the New York Public Library, maybe they do digital rents.
I don't know if they do movies digitally from the New York Public
Okay.
Library, but I'm not sure. But my local public library has a lot of movies, and so they have a lot of
International?
yeah. They have a whole international section.
The
so
New York State.
it's great.
What a place to be.
Our local library is great, actually. It's very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it was a good book. That was really good. Good pick,
Thanks,
Kelsey.
guys.
We're reading another short one for next month.
Yes, I don't have it with me physically.
Bobby, just got it. Thank you, Bobby. Mine's downstairs.
Perfect. Ordinary.
There
That
we
we
go.
see the cover. Oh, I think you froze, or did I freeze?
You froze.
Oh my god! I was like, "Hello,"
I was afraid it was me, so I just stopped moving and just smiled.
but that didn't help me because
Justin just froze.
so I wasn't sure. But yeah, I just got the StreamYard like connection telling me that I'm like back. Yeah, Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro.
Miro, yeah.
Yeah. I'm very excited to. This is a fantasy book that I've been wanting to read, but I have so many giant fantasy books to read this month, and it's just there's this one, there's this one, there's this one. So let's just add another 700 page.
650. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyways, and I'm very excited to read it. It's definitely one that had a lot of buzz when it was published. So I'm very intrigued, and I think
your favorite author has a quote on it, Kelsey. Joe Hill.
Oh,
we've spoken.
I thought it was V. Schwab.
No, a towering achievement.
Now I don't know if I believe him.
I'm about 100 pages in so far. It's very good so far.
I am also about 100 pages in.
Okay, you guys convinced me to buy the physical.
It's very good. You can get it for $5.99 on that that sale.
Yeah, I wish I would have gotten the hardcover.
I don't know. This is gonna be a heavy ass hardcover.
I'm gonna listen to it on audio, so regardless of this,
Okay.
I'm just gonna follow along. I find like nowadays, not to get into this little tangent, but I find nowadays like my brain capacity, like I need an audiobook, otherwise like I'm just not paying attention to it unless it's an author that I've previously read physically. So like Brandon Sanderson, I don't mind reading physically. V. Schwab, I don't mind reading physically, but like new authors, I need help in I need help up here to pay attention. So hopefully there is a audiobook, but I know
I'm sure there's an audiobook. That'd be crazy if there wasn't an audiobook for it.
No, I meant like for free and not like that I have to use my Audible credits is what I meant.
Oh.
I hate using my Audible. I love hoarding them.
Why?
I don't know. I was like, the more I have, the better.
Why wouldn't you just use it on a book that you had to read? It doesn't make sense.
When I do, it's like I'm literally like to Audible I go. But Ordinary Monsters is a historical fantasy. Introduces readers to the dark labyrinth world of the talents. So first of all, I love historical fantasy. Oh my god, it's one of my favorite things in the world is historical fantasy after sci-fi, science fiction fantasy, like blended. So in Victorian London, two children with mysterious powers are hunted by a figure of darkness, a man made of smoke. 16-year-old Charlie Ovid, despite what a name for after the Panini, Charlie Ovid. Despite a lifetime of brutality, doesn't have a scar on him. His body heals itself whether he wants to or not. Marlowe, a foundling from I just learned what a foundling was because the other day I was listening to
Have you not watched The Mandalorian, Kelsey?
Okay. I thought valid. Completely correct. My brain must have just skipped over that when I was like, oh, this is a made up word. I just learned what a foundling is. A foundling, because I was listening to a podcast about like a father who kept his daughter in the basement. Anyways, very much in theme with the books. A foundling from a railway freight car shines with a strange bluish light. He can melt or mend flesh. When two grizzled detectives are recruited to escort them north to safety, they are forced to confront the nature of difference and belonging and the shadowy edges of the monstrous.
Those two detectives rule, by the way.
Oh, I'm excited.
Cool.
Do they have
very good?
they have like Sherlock Holmesy vibes?
Not really, not yet anyway. And well, it's very still very, I mean, I'm only like, whatever, it's 100 pages into a 600 page book. So, but I like them a lot, especially the female detective. She's great.
Love a woman in power. The first 5-star review on Goodreads is stick with me here. Ordinary Monsters is a fucking mess. It's an epically long 672 pages with a sprawling cast of characters, an unwieldy system of magic, yada yada, and he goes on and on and on. And then he's like, that being said, cannot stop thinking about this book. 5 stars. and I love that unhingedness. I'm here for it.
Kelsey, I read 5 books in October.
I am so proud of my influence.
Thank you.
Well, my influence.
Yes, I know.
Thank me.
I'm saying I'm thanking you for your influence.
I meant me thanking myself.
I know, and I'm thanking you as well for your influence.
I don't like your influence because I have 24 books in my cart right now. They're $5, $6
Honestly,
a piece.
No, listen. I understand you completely. As we've all seen, the mess that is this room. It becomes an addiction. Where does being a book reader and being a book collector start and stop? I don't know.
Who knows?
I'm like a stamp collector.
The only time I thought about like, oh, I should collect books again, because I did do that at one point, was when I was at Barnes & Noble and I saw those 2 hardcovers, the special editions for Cloud Cuckoo Lands and All the Light We Cannot See.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at those and I was like, these are fantastic hardcovers. I should buy these. And I turned them over and they were $50 a piece. And I was like, not today.
Even like I did a Kickstarter for, hold on, I'm scared.
Kelsey, the strain.
I joined a Kickstarter for Brandon Sanderson special edition covers because he's one of my favorite authors. And I know, guys. I know.
We've never talked about him before.
Really shocking. But I did this because I wanted the special editions before they were published in like the regular hardcovers. And I joined the Kickstarter because it was like a bit cheaper than if I would have paid for them like now, for example.
Yeah.
But they have like art and like art throughout the, like, let's say the chapters are like that.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's really beautiful.
Thanks, guys.
Is that the first Brandon Sanderson book? Is that the first Mistborn book?
No. This is there's like art like this. No, this is so basically in the pandemic. So basically, let me give you the Brandy Sandy. Let me give you the Brandy Sandy lore.
Hang on.
Oh God, we opened up a can of worms
for
the end of this episode about confessions. The shortest book ever. The shortest book ever to talk about the author who writes the longest books ever. So
yeah. Brandon Sanderson writes like, I would say relatively a book a year, for example. He just has so many ideas and he's building like this world called the Cosmere. I talked about this. It's like a whole universe of stories anyways. During the pandemic, he dropped this Kickstarter like last year and he goes, hey, during the pandemic, I wrote 4 new books that are completely unrelated to anything I've ever written.
Oh, these books.
For fun.
Okay.
And he's like, for fun, as experimentations. So this book in particular is like his take on like a sprawling romance in a fantasy setting. It's called Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I don't know anything about these books because I don't like knowing about them before going in.
One of them is like that wizard, the guide to something.
Oh yeah, the Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving Medieval England. I hated that book. Sorry, Brandy. Sorry, Brandon. There's 3 books in my life that I've read from Brandon Sanderson that I despise. 2 of them were from the same like comic book series. I hate his comic books. I find his books are long for a reason, and we need them to be that long. He cannot do a 100-page graphic novel. I was like, where is the substance? But yeah, and that book. It was his take on like a like crime fiction detective like type of funny book. I did not find it funny. Me and Brandon do not laugh together, I guess, because I was like, this is not funny. That was the only book that I really was like, I appreciate that it was an experiment, sir. It should have stayed there.
Do you want to hear the 5 books that I read in October?
Yes, I would actually.
So obviously Confessions, obviously. But Killers of the Flower Moon, The Only One Left, by Riley Sager,
Mm-hmm.
How to Stop Time by Matt Haig,
Mm-hmm.
and My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix.
I need to read my best friend's
Wasn't it on your
Exorcism.
list? It was on your to read list like a month ago, 2 months ago. Or
Yeah,
something.
you know what happened? Nosferatu really put me in a reading slump.
Okay.
And I really couldn't read anything because I was
Okay.
like, I can't read until I finish this book, and I did not want to finish the book.
I love My Best Friend's Exorcism. I loved it.
Okay, that makes me so happy, and I might just like listen to it like here and there. But I do have like content ideas for this month. So I have like this vlog. I have a couple of other vlog ideas.
Can I tell you though? I think I texted both of you guys this. It's on the cover. It's like, oh, it's as the Exorcist. The Exorcist was written by Tina Fey. So you think it's gonna be like a little bit funny, a little bit silly.
Mm-hmm.
It is not. I
Well-
mean, it has a little bit of lightness. A little bit. It's high school, so it's a little bit Mean Girls ish, I guess, in that kind of way. But like, it is like an exorcism story. Like it is. It gets fucking intense.
I think it's because Grady Hendrix has this like campy take to horror. I would urge you to read Horror Store. Let me get it.
I know. I love the way it looks. I'm gonna get it for sure.
Yeah.
I loved
wait.
My Best Friend's Exorcism so much that I'm gonna buy like all his books and read them. Like I loved it. So
Let me just go through my pile.
I am sold. Horror
Hold
Store
on.
book is so cool. It's like that fake. The book looks like an IKEA book, Justin, that we saw in Barnes and Noble. Horror
Which
Store.
one?
Horror Store.
Oh,
It looks
yeah,
like
yeah.
it looks like an IKEA guy catalog. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one was wild.
So that's Grady Hendrix, same person who wrote My Best Friend's Exorcism.
And it is so cool, and like the attention to detail in this book too. It like the back is like a copy of the front, but like scary. Like everything about this book was so fun and
Mhm.
interesting. I highly recommend. I think this is probably where he gets his like. I think this was funny and campy at first, and then there's like a specific part in the book where you're like, what the fuck? And maybe that's what happened in My Best Friend's Exorcism as well, because you're probably like, oh, this is so fun, and like
Yeah.
la 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 la, and like
Yeah.
oh, it's gonna be like a nice little like it's an exorcism story for sure, but
Yeah.
like oh, this is like just gonna be like a campy little fun thing, and then it probably gets really fucked up, and I wouldn't expect anything less.
You know, it's very fucked up. It's very good, and I liked all the characters. It was
So is
great.
this.
I loved it. I like once I started going with it, it like just the book evaporated. Like I was just like I just couldn't put it down. I think I read it in 2 days, basically.
Yeah.
You really blew through that book.
Yeah.
Even
I
this one,
gotta
you're
see.
gonna
I gotta
fly.
see that one, Kelsey. I gotta check that one out.
It's so cool. I really liked How to Stop Time, not as much as the Midnight Library. I thought Midnight Library was way
Which
better.
I just finished yesterday, day before.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday, day
Oh
before.
my god, you guys!
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you. Professor Kelsey is like really happy.
And I signed up for Book of the Month Club, Kelsey.
He made me
Can't
sign
believe
up too.
I got
You guys
tomorrow.
are-
I got tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow.
I also got
favorite
tomorrow,
book.
And then I got a free credit because Justin used my code to sign up for it. So I got what was The Invisible Life of
Addie
Addie LaRue. That's my free book, and then I also got a hardcover of All the Light We Cannot See
Cannot
from
See.
there. Yeah, so I'm excited to read that. And
All bangers.
I know,
there.
right?
All Kelsey approved novels.
I saw your reviews because I was like, maybe we'll do one of these books for my choice. Then I was like, no, Kelsey's read this one, Kelsey's read that one, Kelsey's read this one.
I mean, I probably could, like, I probably still could talk about them, especially like.
No, we
That's
can't do
not
that. We
the
can't
way we
break
do
our
it.
rules. We can't break our
not-
rules,
We
Kelsey.
don't break
There are
rules.
plenty of books you haven't read that we can do.
Oh, please help me! I have.
I got a list. Don't worry.
I
We're
could even send you guys a picture of my shelf, and you guys just pick one.
so we're skipping the month after this one. By the way, we should tell people that we're not
yeah,
doing
this is the last book of the year.
year.
Yeah. Unless I'm open to reading a Star Wars book in December, if you want happiness.
Bobby and I have our own ideas.
We have
about
our own idea for December that we're doing for ourselves, not for content, but you'll be happy about it.
Okay.
We're going to read the first book in the Mistborn series in the month that we're not doing a book for the book club.
Oh my god! Can I read it? I'll reread it. I'll reread it.
I can't tell you no, Kelsey.
Kelsey, no, you're not allowed.
I love that. Oh my god! Let me see if there's an audiobook.
There is an audiobook. I have
No,
it.
I
so,
meant in the library,
I'm sorry.
not on Audible. I just told you.
I'm
Hey.
sorry. He's your favorite author. You can't even use a credit on one of his books?
No, because I saved my credits for the Star Wars audiobooks in December, and now I
Oh.
only have one credit, and now I'm gonna suffer because other than the library, no other audiobook site has the rights to Star Wars books, which listen, I'm not oblivious to the capitalism that comes with being a Star Wars fan, okay? I know.
Yes.
But it still upsets me.
I get it. I understand. Which Star Wars book are you going to read in December?
Okay. I love talking about this. Okay, so I have...
Oh, right now I'm also reading Daisy Jones and the Six right now.
Ooh, that's the other word I want to look for. I couldn't remember the name of it.
Another fucking banger.
Kelsey demanded that I get the audiobook.
Yeah, you have to.
Demanded.
You can't read it any other way.
And can I tell you, Kelsey was right. Because it's amazing.
Read it any other way.
It's not on Book Outlet.
There's a different actor for every part.
Every single part.
Every single part. And like,
how many?
Like real actors
in this.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I mean, Amazon did the series, so I'm guessing that's probably the reason why there's so much money put behind it. But
this audiobook came out before.
Right, before they optioned it, though. I'm wondering if they already had optioned the rights.
So.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
actually.
They put everything into it, and it is great.
No, they put their whole audio bussy into this. Like,
and I did not realize it was like a oral history, like thing written like because like. Justin and I were just talking about how much we both loved World War Z, the book, because it's written like this. We're like an oral history of the zombie apocalypse. Yes. Yeah. You never read it, Kelsey?
No.
Oh, you have to read it.
Is written.
No, this made me so much more intrigued.
Oh my God, it's so good, Kelsey. It's so good. Okay.
I actually have in my cart right now.
The other one? I have it. Me too. Me
Evolution.
too. Yeah, me too. Just.
I have 25 books in my library, and I'll say about 20 of these are hardcovers. Estimated total $149.
That's great. That's amazing. That's amazing. Just put them in a storage unit and forget about them until you get to them.
The Final Girl support group is on here.
I know. I'm
getting it.
I'm getting it.
I have all this room up here now.
I know. I'm getting it.
And I have the Gunslinger. I have the Gunslinger. It's a paperback though, which
that's fine. It would be the smallest hardcover you've ever seen in your life. I don't know if they ever even published it in hardcover.
Do you want to tell you here with some other good ones I have? Lovecraft Country.
I have that book. Just saying, I got it. So.
We'll do lessons in chemistry.
Yes, lessons in chemistry. The one book I don't have out of the 300 that are unread.
I don't understand. It's very big on Book Talk, Kelsey. I don't understand why you don't have it.
First of all, I am.
Why don't you
like Shuya?
Why don't you put videos on TikTok? Why don't you put your videos on TikTok?
Okay, I'll be honest. I try. I sometimes randomly I come out with a video. I'm like feeling it. I'm like inspired.
Because I would watch your videos on TikTok for sure.
I just did a TikTok about being annoyed with a guy who grew mushrooms from his own flesh and blood, and I was like, "Have we learned nothing?"
Oh, I did. I think I did see.
So I was literally like at a loss for words. And then I also did a video once about Good Omens after we read it.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes I do it, but I prefer I really like editing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I need to reserve my TikToks for when I'm feeling funny.
Okay.
So I need to be inspired by funniness or sound.
Well, I mean, judging by all the things I see on my TikTok feed, you don't have to be funny because most of the people are not funny at all.
I'm jealous.
Even when they're trying to be funny.
I know.
They're not funny.
God damn it. One of the books I was going to buy went out of stock.
Yeah. You have to be quick.
Once There Were Wolves.
Oh, good one.
Oh, I saw that cover. That looked good. Do we want to end the stream?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming to class today. Don't forget to read Ordinary Monsters in the month of November. We'll have the live show at the beginning of December. We're not officially reading something, but I'm tagging along and just attaching myself to a read.
Miss Norden?
And we will see you guys. Maybe I'll post maybe a community post if we pick a January book. Or are we?
I'll pick it before we do this book club, so that the Ordinary Monsters book club, so we can announce it then.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Kelsey.
And thank you, everyone. I always forget to end the